قال محمد هو ابن مالك أحمد رب الله خير مالك مصليا على النبي المصطفى وآله المستكملين الشرفا وأستعين الله في ألف
من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. So in this lesson, inshallah, I'm going to be going through the topic of magic and specifically what the Quran says about it. So I'm not going to be talking about things which have not been established specifically by the Quran. I will do this to avoid any conjecture surrounding it. And there is a lot of conjecture out there. Let's begin, inshallah. Magic is mentioned in a number of places in the Quran. And mostly it has to do with accusations. Accusations made against the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where they're called magicians. There are also accusations made against the revelation, the Quran. In هذا إلا سحر يؤثر. Verily this is nothing but magic, which has an effect on people. Now obviously it does have an effect, but that effect is based on it being the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what affects people. The prophets were accused of being magicians, and they were also, like for example Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was accused of being affected by magic. وَقَالَ الظَّالِمُونَ إِن تَتَّبِعُونَ إِلَّا رَجُلًا مَسْحُورًا. That the Zalimun say that you follow no one except a man who is affected by magic. So most of the aspects related to magic are accusations. So magic was actually known prior to the Quran. Even the kuffar of Mecca had many superstitions regarding this. Now, the Quran actually mentions two types of magic. We'll go through both of them. The first one is it's what's known as illusion. Like for example in the story of Nabi Musa alayhi salam. He says to the magicians, قال بل ألقوا, you throw. And then it says فإذا حبالهم وعصيهم يخيل إليه من سحرهم أنها تسعى. And suddenly the ropes and staffs seemed يخيل إليه, seemed to him from their magic that they were moving. So it was the sihr which caused the ropes and the staffs to appear to move. Here there's an illusion that they did move. It's just illusion. What we see or what we perceive is not actually the reality of it. And this type of magic is very weak, because when the truth comes, this type of magic disappears. So when Musa alayhi salam threw his staff down and it became a snake, then those magicians knew that this was not magic. Okay, so that's one type of magic. Okay? Now, the other type is magic which is explained in Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 102. It's a long ayah. Let's go through it, inshallah, in some detail. Before going to the ayah, let's speak about the ayah before it, because it has a relationship to ayah 102. So in ayah 101, it says, وَلَمَّا جَاءَهُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. Here this Rasul is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So when he came, when a messenger from Allah came to them, to the Jews, and he was مُصَدِّقٌ لِمَا مَعَهُمْ, and it confirmed that which was with them. So what was with them in terms of the revelation, the Torah, and what they had. It confirmed. What did they do? نَبَذَ فَرِيقٌ. So نَبَذَ means to disregard it completely and throw it away. نَبَذَ فَرِيقٌ مِنَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ. That a group, this is talking about a group of the Ahl al-Kitab. And here utul kitab has been used rather than الَّذِينَ آتَاهُمُ الْكِتَابَ. So utu, when the passive is used, there's negative meaning associated. They were given the book, but they didn't do anything about it. In fact, they threw it away. So الذين أوتوا الكتاب كتاب الله, the scripture of Allah, they threw it away. وراء ظهورهم كأنهم لا يعلمون, as if they didn't even know about it. So this is a big crime, what they committed. And this was actually a group of them. And what did they do? Rather than follow كتاب الله, واتبعوا ما تتلو الشياطين على ملك سليمان. So then they followed this. So this wow here connects to what came before it. So they followed اتبعوا. So their efforts were with this, that which تتلو الشياطين على ملك سليمان. What the shayateen تتلو, something that they follow, and they actually ascribe it to Mulk Sulaiman, to the time when Sulaiman alayhi salam was ruling his dominion. And here ala Mulk Sulaiman. For example, we say كذبت على, or افتريت على, somebody lied or fabricated على, upon this particular person. In other words, he attributed this lie or this fabrication to him. وَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنْ افْتَرَى عَلَى اللَّهِ كَذِبًا. Who is more unjust than one who fabricates a lie against Allah? So على Allah. It says here, وَمَا كَفَرَ سُلَيْمَانَ وَلَكِنَ الشَّيَاطِينَ كَفَرُوا. Sulaiman alayhi salam was accused of being involved in this. The Quran negates this completely. مَا كَفَرَ Sulaiman وَلَكِنَ الشَّيَاطِينَ كَفَرُوا. And when it talks about shayateen, it's speaking of both the shayateen of the ins wal jinn, both. And we know that they can also help one another. As mentioned in Surah Jinn, where it says, وَأَنَّهُ كَانَ رِجَالٌ مِّنَ الْإِنسِ يَعُوذُونَ بِرِجَالٍ مِّنَ الْجِنِّ فَزَادَهُمْ رَهَقًا. And verily there were men among the mankind who took help with the jinn, and they increased them only in wrongdoing. So now what the Quran says about this kafaru, وَلَكِنَ الشَّيَاطِينَ كَفَرُوا, so this explains what kafaru is, what comes after it, this part here. يُعَلِّمُونَ النَّاسَ السِّحْرَ. They teach men sihr. And something else. وَمَا أُنزِلَ على الملكين ببابل هاروت وماروت. And ما أنزل. Notice here it was ما أنزل, passive. Like for example, utu. Unzila is a passive, what was authorized upon them. So unzila actually has a negative meaning to it. And this was a test. They were authorized by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a test to these people in a particular area of Babil, which is in Iraq. Here it says Ala al-Malakain, what was given or authorized Ala al-Malakain. Here Ala is different to this Ala here. This Ala, obviously they were given authority. What was actually sent down or given, or they were authorized with Ala al-Malakain, on the two angels. Now some scholars have said that they're not actually angels, because they say angels can only give good tidings and matters which have good in them, not evil. But these actually were a test. And it says here, Malakain, they're two angels. So we cannot deny this. They're two angels that were sent. And when angels get sent down to earth, they take a human form. Like for example, in the story of Nabi Ibrahim, when the two angels came to him, or to Nabi Lut, and so on. Here the two angels, they were sent to Babil, and their names were Harut wa Marut. Some say that Harut and Marut are attributes, some say they were names, doesn't really matter. The point is that they taught something. Because what happened is that these shayateen taught sihr, and specifically what Harut and Marut taught. And it talks about Harut and Marut, and it says, وَمَا يُعَلِّمَانِ مِنْ أَحَدٍ. And they do not teach anybody. حَتَّى يَقُولَا إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ فِتْنَةً. They do not teach anybody except they say, we are a trial, we are a test. فَلَا تَكْفُرْ. Therefore, do not disbelieve. Do not fall for this fitna. This is actually part of human nature. When you give something up, you always find something else. These people gave up Kitab Allah. These Jews, in this case, followed as-sihr. Now, one point here, just grammatically, some scholars, what they say is that this ma here, وَمَا أُنزِلَ عَلَى مَلَكَيْنِ, that this actually ma is negation, not ma al-mawsula. So it's not that which was sent down, it was not sent down al-malakain. And they try very hard to not attribute sihr to the two angels. But that actually is not a good reading. What they say is that this ma here, وَمَا كَفَرَ, is linked to وَمَا أُنزِلَ. But that's not consistent with language. If you look at the way it's been worded, grammatically that would be flawed to say it in that way. It should have been وَمَا كَفَرَ سُلَيْمَانَ وَمَا أُنزِلَ عَلَى الْمَلَكَيْنِ. You wouldn't put the negation after saying وَلَكِنَ الشَّيَاطِينَ كَفَرُوا يُعَلِّمُونَ النَّاسَ السِّحْرَ. The proper reading is يُعَلِّمُونَ النَّاسَ السِّحْرَ وَمَا أُنزِلَ. So they taught two things: السِّحْر وَمَا أُنزِلَ عَلَى الْمَلَكَيْنِ بِبَابِلِ. Some Muslims say that what was taught by Harut or Marut was not magic. And what they say is they say يُعَلِّمُونَ النَّاسَ السِّحْرَ, so they teach people sihr, وَمَا أُنزِلَ عَلَى الْمَلَكَيْنِ, and what was authorized to the two angels, Harut and Marut. So they say that وَمَا, this ma, is different to a sihr. But the whole ayah is speaking about sihr and about the fitna of Harut or Marut. So it's ma. We can't say it's not sihr. What we need to know is, what is its reality? What does it do? And we know in the Quran, for example, just because you mention something and there's atf, it doesn't mean that the thing that's coming after it or before it is different. As an example in the Quran, and we have certainly given you, O Muhammad, the 7 oft-repeated verses, the Saba' Mathani, which is Surah Al-Fatiha, and Wal-Quran Al-Azim. So can we say that the Surah Al-Fatiha is not part of Al-Quran? No. They're together. They're mentioned separately. There's a wow between them. But the first one is mukhassas. There's takhsis. It's speaking about a specific part of the Quran. And this is to give importance to it. Similarly here, there's an emphasis on what was given, what was authorized to the two angels. Because most of the discussion is about what the effect it has. The effect of sihr was not mentioned. So what sihr does is it's illusion. And sometimes it's to do with mankind getting help with the jinn and interactions between them. Allah doesn't speak about the sihr, what it affects. But what he does is he speaks about the effect of ma unzila ala al-malakain. And so here there's emphasis on what was authorized to the two angels. So they don't teach anybody, but they say, we are fitna, do not disbelieve, لا تكفر. And then فيتعلمون منهما ما يفرقون به بين المرء وزوجه. So they learn, those people, the shayateen and those who follow them, they learn from these two angels that which divides. يفرقون به بين المرء وزوجه. They follow that which divides and separates between a man and his wife. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, in fact, the greatest effect that this magic has or can have. The greatest harm it can do is this. Now, I've heard people say it can affect even your mental state, your physical state, your provisions, pretty much anything which Allah controls. So obviously they say it's with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but there is absolutely no evidence in either the Quran or authentic ahadith. However, Allah here mentions the greatest effect it can have, which is that it can divide between the husband and wife. And now in any society, this is how you destroy societies, is by destroying this relationship. We know that the shaitan, what's the greatest act that one can do to please him? There's a hadith in Sahih Muslim where the shayateen go and they cause people to commit certain acts, and they come back and they tell the shaitan, I did this, I did that, and he says, you didn't do anything. Then a shaitan comes and says, I didn't leave this person until حتى فرقت بينه وبين امرأته. I did not leave them until I divided him and his wife. And then the shaitan brings him close to him and says, Ni'ma anta. You are so great. He praises this person and brings him close to him. So the shayateen love this, separating between a man and his wife, breaking this marriage relationship. And this is how you destroy societies. And that's what's happening. We see it today. SubhanAllah. This is what's happening. May Allah protect us all. Ameen. This is a side note, but when the Quran mentions certain, for example, a certain evil, it mentions the most extreme form of that evil, or the worst of it. Like, for example, in Surah Al-Munafiqun, it describes the munafiq, the hypocrite. But it mentions the hypocrite that has the greatest fitna upon the Muslims. It doesn't mention any munafiq, your ordinary munafiq. It mentions the one that has the most potential to harm one. And similarly here, it mentions here the greatest harm that this magic can do. And then it says, وَمَا هُمْ بِضَارِّينَ بِهِ مِنْ أَحَدٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. But they do not harm anybody by means of it, إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ, except for the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the magic in itself has no harm. And we have some people, they see magic, or they think magic is done to them, and they get all worried. My advice to you is stop worrying and trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No matter how evil somebody is, no matter how much harm this person is trying to do to you, if you ask Allah to protect you, He will protect you. Then it says, وَيَتَعَلَّمُونَ مَا يَضُرُّهُمْ وَلَا يَنْفَعُهُمْ. They learn that which harms them. So the magic actually harms the person who learns it and has no benefit for them. There's only harm. So here the point here is that it speaks about the greatest effect that this magic can have, which is ما يفرقون به بين المرء وزوجه. The question is, what can we do about it? Does Allah give us a protection from it? He certainly does, as you would expect. What protection does He give to stop this harm happening between a man and his wife? This is it here. وَمِن شَرِّ النَّفَّاثَاتِ فِي الْعُقَدِ. And from the evil from النَّفَّاثَات in al-uqad. Notice I didn't translate it. Here the translation is, and from the evil of the blowers in knots. Now what a number of scholars say is that this is the way that magic is made. It's you blow, they make certain knots, they cast a spell or whatever it is. I don't know any of the details of this, and they blow into it. Now question is, why would Allah mention the way that magicians cast spells? And if they actually do it that way, who knows if they actually do it that way? I've seen Muslims that supposedly try to remove magic. They recite Quran and they blow, which is pretty much the same way that the translation of this ayah is, blowers into knots. Now where's the evidence that this is how magic is done? Where's the evidence for this? There is none. So maybe it's a superstition, and people have translated it, it means, this is the way that the magicians do the magic, and Allah is telling us to seek refuge from the evil of this, of magic. But He didn't say min sharri sihr. He could have just said, something along those lines. Why would He mention an-naffathati fil uqad? This is my look into this ayah, and actually links back to the ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah. Because in Surah Al-Baqarah it mentions the greatest effect, or the effect that Allah has highlighted. Let's speak about, so it's min sharri nafathat. It comes from nafatha, which means to blow, to throw, to eject, to propel, and so on. The way it's used in an interesting way, and actually there are similar words to it. For example, we have nafaha, nafakha, nafatha. Similar, just the last letter is different. So they all have the meaning of blowing. But nafatha, actually, the way it's used, these are 3 sentences to see how it's used. Nafatha al-thu'banu as-sum. The snake injected its venom. Nafatha al-jarhu ad-dam. The wound poured out blood. And here, they're both physical manifestations of nafatha. Here nafatha is more metaphysical. And an example here is nafatha sadruhu bil-adawa, which means animosity was thrown into his chest. So one thing you note about this verb nafatha is that it has meanings of harm and difficulty associated with it. Now, scholars have mentioned here nafathat actually is describing the sahirat, or the female sorcerers, or the female magicians. My suggestion is that it refers to the evil that they cast. One of these evils is called nafatha, and here is the plural, nafathat. So it's similar to the word sayya and sayyi'at, and it's inclusive of the shayateen from the ins and jinn who cast this magic. And if you notice, also this is on the pattern of sighatul mubalagha, fa'al. And the sighatul mubalagha used here denotes the constant barrage of the shayateen to try to cast and throw these things fil uqad. So what is fil uqad? Here the word uqad in this translation is knots, which is like a rope or a string that they tie and cast spells, which is what they translate it to mean. What I'm suggesting is this uqad, which is the plural of uqda. What's an uqda? It's a knot, but it also denotes a bond, a contract or a bond. And what it does is that there's actually something evil which is thrown into this. The grace uqda, which the Quran mentions, that those who learn sihr, what they try to do is يفرقون بين المرء وزوجه. If you notice here in this ayah, ولا تعزموا عقدة النكاح. Here, the uqda, which is the singular of uqad, the uqda of nikah. It's a bond. It's a contract and a bond that one has, and there's actually harm that can happen to this uqda. And what is the protection? Surah Al-Falaq. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. So may Allah protect everybody, his household, his children, his family. That's the end of the presentation. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين.
قال محمد هو ابن مالك أحمد رب الله خير مالك مصليا على النبي المصطفى وآله المستكملين الشرفا وأستعين الله في ألف